This may come as something of a surprise, but France actually isn't a part of Europe. Well, it is, of course, just not when you're talking about cars. You see, when people talk about Euro cars, they're inevitably talking about those German brands, famed for all that precision engineering. Or maybe even the Italian brands, famed for swapping vast sums of cash for very, very pretty cars. What they're not talking about is French cars. You see, the French were famed for being quirky, oddly designed, oddly laid out oddities that somehow look at home in the streets of Paris, but less so in the Newcastle Macca's car park. But the Peugeot 508 Allure Touring isn't any of those things. I mean, just look at it. It's a thing of elegant beauty. And it isn't quirky to drive either. And it's comfortable, and practical, and cool. So has France just joined the automotive EU?
First things first, touring is just a fancy way of saying wagon, which, if you can't remember as far back as the mid-2000s, were those long body cars you used to see everywhere before the market was eaten by SUVs. The 508 range, including the Touring, was launched in 2012 and overhauled in 2015, with Peugeot reshaping the front end and rethinking the interior to give it a more premium, sophisticated look. While the 508 sedan is available in entry-level active, mid-spec Allure and top-spec GT versions, the Touring is only offered in the Allure trim level, but it is pretty comprehensively equipped, arriving with heated leather seats, a 7-inch nav-equipped touchscreen and an 8-speaker stereo. You'll also get cruise control, push-button start, quad-zone climate control, parking sensors and a reversing camera.
Diesels are hugely popular in Europe, and for that matter, so are station wagons. But in Australia, not so much. All of which makes the 508 Touring something of a tricky sell here. And that's a shame, because we've been hugely impressed by the practicality of this car. At just over 4.8 metres long, there is a ton of room in here. Now I'm sitting behind my own driving position, and as you can see, there is an acreage of space between me and the seat in front. Now, front seat passengers share 2 cup holders, while in the back there's another 2 in this pull-down divider. But back here you also get your own climate controls, power source and reading lights. But the real party trick arrives back there. There's a common misconception that if you have a lot of stuff to carry, you're better off with an SUV, but that's simply not the case. Actually, if you're in the load lugging business, there's nowhere better to be than in a wagon. This one, for example, will give you 612 litres of space with those rear seats up, but if you drop them, that grows to 1,817 litres. Now that is heaps, and in fact it's more than most 7-seat SUVs will offer you, even with the third and second row of seats folded flat.
There's only the one engine on offer for the Allure, and that's a 2-litre diesel paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission with its power sent to the front wheels. Peugeot claims fuel use to be a combined 5.7 litres per 100 kilometres. But a weapon this ain't. The diesel engine produces a handy, but not life-changing, 120 kilowatts and 340 newton metres.
And those numbers translate to a fairly pedestrian drive experience. The 0 to 100 kilometre an hour time is listed at 9.2 seconds, but in the real world it doesn't actually feel that fast. And the suspension and steering too, if you really push them, reveal themselves to be a step or 2 behind the Euro benchmarks. Now that's not that it does anything badly, in fact it does most things very well, it's just not truly excellent in some areas. But keep it humming along at city speeds and the 508 Touring slips perfectly into its element. It's composed in the city, it's quiet on most road surfaces, although some coarse chip can make a noise in the cabin and more worryingly a bit of a rattle in the dash. But the steering is easy and predictable, the gearbox is seamless, and it does exude a real sense of premium in the cabin. Then there's this kind of noticeable delay to anything you ask it to do, and that's especially obvious with the parking brake, which takes about 2 or 3 seconds to turn off or on every time you activate it. But this next bit's my personal favourite. They have this beautiful touchscreen here that controls your satellite navigation, Bluetooth, stereo and everything else, and they've also helpfully given you a cup holder. The only downside is, when you use that cup holder, you can no longer see the screen at all. It's so beautifully French. Practical, good looking, and with just enough quirks to remind you you're driving something French, the 508 Allure Touring has earned its spot amongst the other Europeans. If you're in the market for an SUV and ride height isn't a deal breaker, then maybe a wagon like the 508 Touring should be on your short list. To read the full review, click here, and don't forget to subscribe to stay on top of all our latest videos.